Hi, my name is Mike Dillard, and this is Self-Made Man, the podcast for men who want to leave their mark on the world and create a legacy of honor, integrity, and achievement in every aspect of their lives. I'm glad you're here, and once again, it is time to forge your destiny. I am insatiably fascinated by entrepreneurs who've managed to take an idea and turn that idea into a product, and then who've managed to turn that product into a brand. You know, in the online world, most entrepreneurs that I've observed, and I have to include myself in this group, have managed to build successful businesses that come and go in a matter of years. And in fact, I can think of very few who are still building the same brand and same business past the 5-year mark. Well, today you're going to hear a fascinating story from an incredibly bright entrepreneur who is building her company to last 100 years. Her name is Victoria Tsai, and she's the founder of the boutique skincare company called Tatcha. Now, Tatcha is a living example of what it looks like to start a company and create a product that is based on a story, a commitment to uncompromising quality, a clear set of values, and a 100-year vision. This is incredibly inspiring. It is filled with words of wisdom that will serve you and your business now and into the future. So please help me welcome Victoria Tsai. All right, welcome back, everybody. Mike Dillard here, and today we have a really unique opportunity to dive into the world of branding, and we're going to be speaking to a very successful entrepreneur who has managed to take an idea and turn it into a product, and then to take that product and to really turn it into a brand. And so I would love to welcome Victoria Tsai to the show. So Victoria, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Absolutely. And you were introduced to me by a friend of mine who said I needed to check out your brand and the company that you've been building. So I've had an opportunity to really dive into your story over the last couple of weeks. And it's unbelievably impressive because you didn't necessarily come from a background of product production and branding. And this was a very new landscape for you, but you've managed to turn it into an amazing skincare line for women that's just been growing like crazy. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today.
Thank you.
So if you wouldn't mind, take us through how this all got started for you, because there's a fantastic story behind the brand and how you were inspired to start this business and to build it to where it is today.
You know, when I first graduated from college, I was a credit derivatives trader in New York. And my husband and I were both in one of the financial centers on 9/11. And it really, really changed for us how we thought about our lives and our careers at a young age.
Real quick. So when you say that, you were in one of the towers?
We were in one of the financial centers. So there's the two trade towers, the World Trade Center towers, and then flanked on all four corners are the financial centers where the banks were. So we were working at Merrill Lynch in one of the financial centers they're connected by land bridge. So basically right next door.
Yeah. What was that like? I have to ask you, what was that like? Because you were one of the few people who were right there.
It was one of those experiences that's so surreal that even to this day, it's hard for me to really comprehend that it happened. But then the experience didn't go away quickly. So I was on the trading floor, and then they moved us to Jersey City for a while, but then they moved us back to the trading floor, and my view was over the hole that was left after the towers fell for months as they excavated the hole, and they pulled out where they were finding, and they were covering it with American flags as they were pulling it out. It was a constant reminder. It wasn't one day, that a great tragedy had happened. And then my husband got sick after that with an autoimmune disease, and that stuck for a few years. And so it was the catalyst that really made us start thinking early on in life about what does it all mean? What are we going to do with our lives? How does work fit into that? But the transition from there to here was, a rather long and meandering one. Eventually we went to business school. Eventually I moved into marketing at product companies, including Starbucks. That took me a lot to Asia. Finally, I moved to Silicon Valley to head up marketing for a VC-backed startup, learned a little bit about the internet. And then one day I woke up and I don't want to say that I was burned out, but I was over it.
Unfulfilled.
I literally just said, I choose happiness. And I didn't know what that meant or what the plan was, but I walked into work that day and resigned and started traveling. which is unusual because I've never been a huge traveler, but I felt like I needed to find a different approach to life. And then at the same time, I had acute dermatitis on my face from working at a big beauty care company and testing too much on my own face. So my entire face had been bleeding, blistering, scaling, my lips, my eyelids for a few years. I'd been on oral and topical steroids and antibiotics, and I just couldn't keep it under control. So at the same time, I was looking for, honestly, makeup at that point to cover up what had happened to my skin because the doctor said that my skin was not going back to normal.
Wow, and
So
that's from using makeup.
That was from using skincare that gave me acute dermatitis. So then I was trying to find makeup to cover up the scarring and the blisters, the redness. So when I was traveling, I would just kind of automatically look for alternatives to what I could find in the US because everything I was putting on my face in the US was exacerbating it. And then I ended up by chance meeting a geisha in Japan, in Kyoto actually. And it was around the same time that I discovered these, what they call blotting papers. They're papers that are the byproduct of the gold leaf beading process. So in Japan, things that are precious, they leaf it in gold, and to turn gold into gold leaf, you have to hammer it, and you have to put pieces of paper between the gold and the hammer, or else you end up with a big gold hammer because the gold is kind of sticky. And the paper this hammering paper, the gold leaf artisans used to just throw it away when they were done, but then geisha and kabuki actors would come around and use it to keep their makeup fresh. And I was looking for them. They introduced me to geisha. I started studying with geisha, and
can you define geisha for us for those who are not familiar?
Thank you. Yes. So the first time I met a geisha, I had the same misunderstandings and misconceptions about them that anybody in the Western world naturally might. Geisha means art person in Japanese. They are considered almost sacred performance artists. They are meant to embody the values of Japan's traditional culture. They have been around for 300 years. They are schooled in dance and tea ceremony and do a lot of things with temples. They're primarily in Kyoto, but there's also districts in Tokyo and Osaka. They are exquisite kind of living, moving art, but they're also highly, highly, highly trained and educated. We have misunderstood them for a few reasons. More than anything, there was a book called Memoirs of a Geisha. It became very popular, was it in the 90s? And it's a fantastic book, but it's completely a work of fiction written by an American man. But he wrote it in the style of a diary of a real geisha. And unfortunately, that turned into a cultural phenomenon that all of that misunderstanding persists. But they're not concubines. They never have been. They're incredible performance artists.
Very good. Thank you for that.
Thank you for asking.
So you met a geisha during your travels in Japan.
The first time I met them with their white makeup on. And I knew they'd been around for a few hundred years, so I knew that their makeup predated the petrochemical industry, which just meant that, I felt that instinctively because their ingredients must be natural, they must be more healthy for you. That's not necessarily true that all things that are natural are healthier for you. Obese things natural, but you don't necessarily want one of those. But it led down this course of research for me. And as I was asking them about their makeup, I started spending time with them during the day when they did not have their makeup on, and their skin is exquisite. It looks like a child's skin. Whether they're 80 or 20, they have the same, the skin is unbelievable. My entire iPhone is full of pictures of their beautiful skin. And there's a few reasons for it, but one is that makeup that they wear, it's stage makeup. And back in the day when they first started performing, there was no electricity, so they performed by candlelight. So they have that very iconic white makeup so that people could see them. But in order to have that white makeup look really good, their skin has to be ultra smooth because it's kind of like when you paint a wall. If there's a crack or a bump in the wall and you paint it white, it exacerbates the look of any imperfections. So they didn't develop over the last 300 years to become skincare experts, but it's a byproduct of their artistry that they've had to just figure out how to get their skin to be really, really, really beautiful and smooth. And so I started using what they were using, and they were things that were completely foreign to me. Camellia oil, rice bran, basically the basis of the Japanese diet. And when I started using them, even though the doctors told me that my skin wasn't going to come back to normal, after about 8 weeks it did. And then now my skin is better than it's ever been, but I'm using things that are so simple and pure. And then more than anything, I fell in love with the life there, which is one of authenticity and artistry. If you ever get a chance to go to Kyoto, it's like walking back in time to a place where honor and integrity still matters. There's over 2,000 temples. People have been doing the same thing for 14 generations. It's a really incredible place that I found to be tremendously healing from the inside out. And so I created Tatcha as a way to keep that with me and share it with other people that might be looking for authenticity and purity and beauty in their lives beyond skin.
So it started with the blotting papers, correct?
That's correct.
And so you go to Japan, I can just imagine in my head, and you come back to the States and you've been using this and you're seeing some positive results for yourself. Can you walk us through, that part of the story where you're like, you know what, I think I'm going to turn this into a business. How did you actually go about that?
It's a great question. So in the Western world, when you start developing teenage hormonal acne, what we do here is we start immediately kind of assaulting the skin. And we use things like retinoids and salicylic acid, oxy pads, things that really dry out and are super aggressive on the skin because we feel like we have to move it into submission. In Asia and in Japan in particular, it's much more working with the body and the skin. So instead of using all these alcohol-based, acid-based products on young skin, they just use paper. And these were these blotting papers that just take off the excess oil, don't dry out the skin, and then let the skin stay in balance that way. The idea that you could replace all those teenage acne products with a piece of paper was shocking to me. And I should qualify, teenage hormonal acne is difficult, and these blotting papers alone are not enough if you have a severe case of it, but it can help keep the skin in balance without exacerbating the issues. It was just such a balanced, holistic approach to taking care of the skin, and the skin is just your body's largest organ. We feel like, in the Western world that we can treat it and we can put whatever we want on it just because we can reach it. But it's not like we actively dose our kidneys or dose our livers. So I was really enthralled with this idea that something that's so simple could be so effective. And it was counter to everything that I felt like I learned, especially about beauty in the Western world growing up in the US. So I asked these artisans if I could bring the beauty papers over to the US because the fact that they've been doing it for so long that it's literally still the gold standard. It's one of the original beauty products in the world and that it still exists and it's still being handmade in Japan, still being used by geisha. It was real. And I yearned so much for something real at that point in my life as a consumer, as a woman, as a professional. And at first they said no, but then I sold my engagement ring and had enough money to buy enough that they were willing to let me take a chance. And then one day, this huge crate from Japan showed up in my one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco. And I just thought, I really hope other people like blotting papers as much as I do.
So you've got the papers that show up. There's no packaging around them. Does the company Tatcha even exist at that moment in time?
I had been parallel pathing while they were doing the first run for us. And I brought on two co-founders. One, his name is Stanley Hainsworth. He's one of the most celebrated designers in the country. He had been global head of creative for Starbucks before he started his own agency. So he joined as my creative partner. And then there was a fantastic guy named Ryan Eipersbach, who is a fantastic technologist here in Silicon Valley. And I brought him on as well. So it was myself, a designer, and a technologist.
And where did y'all come up with the name? I'm very curious because I have not read that part of the story. Or what does it have a meaning behind it?
Yeah, Tatcha is short for Tachibana. Tachibana is the art of single standing flower in Japanese. The beauty that you can find in something when you strip away the excess. Geisha also are meant to represent standing flowers. Tachibana is hard to spell though and hard to say, so we truncated it to Tatcha.
Very cool. And what would you say is the core values or mission behind the brand? Because this is obviously, much deeper for you than blotting paper and good skincare.
Thank you so much for that. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and we launched the company into retail the day that she was born. And coming from the beauty industry, a woman in the U.S., I have very mixed feelings about how we portray beauty and the ideals of beauty in the Western world. I wonder how they're going to affect her sense of self. People ask me all the time, you've been studying with geisha, supermodels, you're in the beauty industry, what have you learned about beauty? And the one thing that I keep coming back to is what I've learned from the geisha, which is that beauty begins in the heart and the mind. When you think in your life about the people who you perceive to be the most beautiful, it's not the ones with the most symmetrical bone structure or the smoothest skin. They're usually people who made you feel loved. And so for us, so much about what we do is making sure that we are a values-driven company, that everything that we do is about having the people who we touch feel genuinely cared for. We are madly, deeply in love with our clients. We feel that our long-term strategy is to love our products and love our clients more than anybody else. And because of our business model, we're able to fund a day of school for girls in developing countries with every purchase, full-size skincare purchase from Tatcha. So we are closing in on 1 million days of school at the end of this year. And we partner with an amazing organization called Room to Read. They are one of the preeminent nonprofits in the world for education. They operate in 11 countries, and I've had the opportunity to go to some of the countries in schools where these girls are going to school, and it makes you realize that you can make a difference. So that was a very long answer to your question.
No. Well, it's great because it's just definitely bringing more to the table for me. That's an unbelievable accomplishment. And did y'all, how did y'all integrate that into your business model? Is that on a per purchase basis, a dollar revenue basis, a profit basis? Is that something that I'm very interested in doing? Whether you call that a for purpose, type of business model or whatever it may be, integrating that project for or component for social good as a part of doing good business is obviously a big trend these days and a very welcomed one. So what kind of insights could you share with myself and everybody else listening when it comes to making the decision to do something like that?
For us, it was really important to find a partner organization that was going to be able to use the funds that we could provide efficiently and effectively. So that's why we chose Room to Read as a partner. They're just really, really, really well known for metrics. And then for our business model, we decided we just wanted it to be part of the DNA. So every single full-size skincare purchase funds a day of school for a girl in one of their programs. So as we grow, the financial commitment grows with it, and we're okay with that. And there's no cap to it. There's no maximum amount that we're willing to give. It's the right thing to do for us.
That's awesome. Very cool. And so that's something that y'all decided to do at what point in your business? Was that at the very beginning when you were first starting out, or when you got to a place where you're a bit more stable from a financial perspective?
It wasn't from the very beginning, but not because we didn't want it to be, but because we were really assessing partners. We knew that whoever we partnered with, we wanted it to be forever. So it took us a little while to find the right partner. In addition to that, they've got strong brands as well. So if you're kind of a no-name startup and you're like, hey, why don't I partner with you? And you have to prove that you've got the wherewithal and the potential to give them contributions that are going to be worth their brand, to be honest. So it was a couple years in when we started, but we were by no means, financially stable. It was before my partner and I took a salary. It was while we were still in my garage and not profitable by any far stretch. So no, we didn't do it from day one, but we did it when we were still a garage startup.
Well, that's a part of the story that I actually wanted to go back to a little bit, because that's the inflection point, right? Where a lot of people can get to the garage, point. It's how do you get out of the garage in a successful manner that is the first really big challenge. And so you've got that palette of these papers now. How did you plan to sell those?
I started with the papers for a few reasons. One, proper R&D for skincare takes a few years, and I knew that would take a few years. The other thing is that our brand and our value proposition were so opposite of what is on trend or what was on trend at the time for skincare in the US that I didn't know really if anybody would be interested. in the US, Western skincare is very much kind of medical pharmaceutical focused. If you've got peptides, if you've got a doctor's name on it, and the more aggressive and medical it sounds, the better. And so the idea of a skincare ritual that's based on a 300-year-old tradition from another culture, at that time, it was not cool at all. We're lucky that the trend has moved in our direction, but I needed to do a concept test first to see if anybody would care. And when I first went out, I went to PR agencies to see if they would help me out because I did have a marketing background, so I knew I had to get the story out. And every single PR agency that I went to turned me down and said that we had no story. So I also tried to get investors and could not get anybody interested for the life of me. So I worked 4 jobs and I went to the library and pulled the mailing addresses for the editors and makeup artists that I admired. And I just wrote them a sincere letter about my experience and why I loved these blotting papers and sent them through. Thankfully, a few weeks later, we started getting a lot of positive response from makeup artists, from the media. I think we're on the Today Show within a couple of weeks. And then after that, all the major magazines in the beauty industry had covered it. And the retailers started calling. So we were in 200 points of distribution with the blotting papers pretty quickly from there.
That's awesome. So you would say it was kind of a guerrilla / PR, marketing campaign to really get things kicked off.
Yeah.
Very cool. And then, you've got some revenue coming in. I've typically found that most entrepreneurs have a really strong set of skills in one particular area, maybe 2. And then there are some very big blind spots. I know that's certainly the case for me. What was your biggest blind spot or weakness when it came to moving the business forward, and how did you address that?
Financing. The way that we wanted to develop our skincare range, we wanted to do it old school. In skincare these days and color cosmetics, the typical way that you bring a brand and product to market is you go to contract manufacturers, they bring you stock formula, stock packaging, you pick your texture, you sprinkle in, 0.01% of a marketing ingredient, you pick your stock package, you put your name on it, and you're out the door. Yeah. And that's how people world. Can, yeah, it's how, people who you've never heard of before suddenly can launch an 80-piece color collection or a 20-piece skincare line. And you think, well, how did they have any expertise to do that? They didn't, honestly. But that is also, frankly, how I ended up with acute dermatitis on my skin. And I had worked with scientists before I started Tatcha, sustainability thought leaders, on understanding all the issues that we have with personal care in the U.S. It's not regulated by the FDA. We use ingredients that are considered barbaric in the rest of the world. It was just highly inelegant, unbeautiful approach to something that's supposed to be beautiful. So we knew that we wanted to go old school. We wanted our own scientists. We wanted to create everything from scratch. We wanted raw materials from scratch. It would be expensive and it would take years. And then we would put it through rigorous clinical testing before we would ever bring it to market. And so that cost money. And even though I went to Harvard Business School and even though I came from Wall Street, I did not know how to raise money like that. So I brought on my next partner, who is now my day-to-day operating partner and president. His name is Brad Murray. He came from the private equity world, from consumer products. And I had met him because I had put together the talk with Andy Dunn from Bonobos, and he had come to listen to the talk. So that's how we split the world now. He runs sales and finance, and I do all the formulations and the design.
Would you be willing to share any kind of insights on that piece of the puzzle? Because you're saying you need financing, which is totally understandable. So did he bring money and expertise to the table?
He brought expertise, and from there he went and did the fundraising. So for us, our stated goal is to be a brand that's going to be around for 100 years. In the beauty space, the normal thing to do is go to the contract manufacturers, launch a brand quickly, sell it quickly to a big, like L'Oreal, Estee Lauder, and take your money off the table, and you're rich. That is great, but that's not why we started the company. So we had to make sure that we did financing that was consistent with our mission as a company, which is to be around for 100 years. And there's slow money, there's fast money. So
we decided early on to not go the institutional route. We decided not to go with any strategics or institutional investors. We did friends and family for the first several years. And then even now it's pretty much friends, family, and mentors.
Yeah, interesting. That's a subject that I've been reading a lot about lately. And it's interesting. There are so many different opportunities, and the chances for making a very, very, very expensive mistake are high. Because once you accept a check or money or an agreement or whatever, that's kind of it. You're stuck with the deal, whether you like it or not. And so any words of wisdom when it comes to that? Because even from a friends and family perspective, if I were to accept money from that same group of people, the amount of pressure that I would feel to not fail would be immense. How did you deal with that?
By avoiding it for as long as possible, which is why I worked 4 jobs and sold my engagement ring and my car and my furniture to finance it for as long as I could without having to go to them. And then by the time I did have friends and family invest, it was after the proof of concept was done and before we started scaling, so that at least I knew that their money was going to grow something with some sort of proof of viability. It was much less of a gamble.
Right. That makes sense. And just your previous experience and the people that you've brought onto the team, all add up to reduce that risk as much as possible. So we haven't really talked about it yet, but I think it's an important part of your story. Let's talk about the philosophy or the actual ingredients that are in your products that separate what you've done with Tatcha versus everything else that you would find and that women would find in the cosmetics section of their local department store.
It goes back to authenticity and a value system and purity. As a woman, especially because I was pregnant when I was developing this, especially because I had worked with sustainability scientists from Berkeley and understood the potential hazards of cosmetics ingredients that you're putting on your skin. We are absorbing up to 5 pounds of chemicals a year from the personal care products that we're putting on our skin because our skin is semi-permeable. And not everybody's going to get acute dermatitis like I did, thank goodness. But some amount of the chemicals that you put on your body are going to end up in your body and stay in your body. It's called bioaccumulation. And for someone who is breastfeeding, for someone who's pregnant, you just become hyper aware of the fact that what you're putting on yourself that seems so innocuous, it's just a lipstick, it's just a face wash, it's just a cream, can affect another life. And so I have been putting heaven knows what on my body and absorbing it for, at that point when I had my daughter, 33 years. And then the first time when she was born and I breastfed her, I passed over 33 years of bioaccumulation. So when she's 33 years old, she's going to have 66 years of bioaccumulation in her body. We don't know. We don't know what the outcome of that is going to be, but there's certainly a lot of data to make us say, could we do it better? And so the only way that I knew how to do that is if I did it from scratch myself. So we hired world-class scientists from Japan, basically brought people out of retirement. The geisha beauty ritual is largely codified in a book written in 1813 that we were very lucky to find and translate, and go back to Japan all the time. And I go to Kyoto, I study with geisha. Then I go to Tokyo, I sit with our scientists. We reverse engineer everything, rebuild it from scratch, go back out to farms and meet with growers and farmers, figure out how to extract things, ferment things, put them into formulas that are elegant and beautiful and highly efficacious, and then bring them to women and men today. In fact, a surprising percentage of our clients are actually men.
And would you consider, that the case as far as the products being unisex? Because having gone through the site, are the products unisex, or do you have a men's line and a women's line?
The collection is absolutely unisex. There are things that men will often appreciate more, just because your skin has different concerns, but the entire collection is unisex.
Okay, interesting. So the reason that I asked you the question about the ingredients and the formulations and y'all's intention, behind the brand, is you're clearly making, one of, if not the top quality skincare products in the world, and all of the trouble that you put in to do that. But at the end of the day, most of the time that's not enough. Like the world is littered with amazing products and inventions and companies that produce phenomenal quality work, but they don't get the other side of the equation down, which is at the end of the day, you've got to sell it and market it. Have there been any really big success stories from a marketing perspective that have just made a huge impact for you guys?
That's a great question. No, to be honest, I remember when I first started out, I met with some mentors of brands, some in cosmetics, some in other spaces that I admired, and I asked them what it was, what the secret was, and I was super disappointed to find out that it wasn't one thing that made a difference. It was the 10,000 things that they did. If there was one thing, I would do that again every day, all day. There's no one thing. It's been. I mean, we still don't. Up until a year ago, we didn't even have a marketing department. It was just me. We are still ultra lean, and we still very much rely on just word of mouth and happy clients. Our goal is just to take care of our clients for a lifetime, and when they're happy, they will often send Tatcha as a gift to their loved ones, and that's how we grow.
And I believe, if I remember correctly, you've also had an opportunity to jump on the shopping networks on television. How did that come about, and how did that go?
Let's see. We went on first about 3 years ago with our cleansers and exfoliants. We were really lucky to go onto QVC with an amazing host. Her name is Lisa Robertson. She took me under her wing and believed in us, and really loved the formulas. And so it was because of her and QVC that we were able to get the word out about those two pieces specifically. They've definitely been an invaluable part of the equation. But, it's one part of the equation. Then there's the other 9,999 things you have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, having not been in the physical products world, it's always a fascinating topic to me because, you have an actual cost of goods sold as opposed to a digital product, which is all that I've ever really been involved in that are essentially free, ebooks or videos or whatever it may be. And so you've got a different level of profit margin that creates some challenges from a marketing perspective. You have to watch your numbers very, very closely and go into deals with vendors, in a really reasonable rate. So I find that really interesting. And one of the questions that I always have for entrepreneurs with physical products, especially in this type of space, how much of an important factor is the packaging? Because, and I relate this to, like, let's say shopping at Whole Foods. I just wonder how much time and effort and testing and surveys all of these companies have gone through to put together their packaging, because that's the one thing that is going to catch the browser's attention or not. And so I'm very curious as to how y'all went through that process and the amount of emphasis that you've put on it.
Great question. It's important and it's not important at the same time. Nobody in the US understands skincare. It's because it's part of the regulations. You're not allowed to speak to the structure and function of skin when you're explaining how skincare works. The FDA doesn't regulate cosmetics products, but they do regulate what you can say about cosmetics products, or else it becomes a drug claim. And so as a result, Americans especially have grown up never really understanding how their skin works. As the result, they don't understand how skincare works. And there's so many claims out there and so many products. It's confusing, it's paralyzing, it's depressing. And so when they pick up your skincare product and they turn it around, they don't understand the ingredients for the most part. Sometimes they think they do, they largely don't. And then from there, it's a leap of faith. And even the best skincare could and should take a couple of weeks to work, because the skin that you can see readily is dead, and it takes the skin a couple of weeks to turn. And so the effect of great skin really takes a little while. So you have to make that investment and then wait. So when you look at the packaging for a skincare product in particular, you're looking for cues that what they're saying that they're going to do for you will actually happen. So for us, when we think about our packaging, nobody ever wants to feel like they're paying for packaging. And frankly, our formulas are so expensive to produce that, we're not going to load on lots of extra expense in packaging as well. But the design is important because it's all people can look at to understand what you stand for.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. So, what was y'all's philosophy when it came to that? And did you do any kind of testing, right? Like obviously the primary color scheme for your brand is purple and white. How did that decision come about?
I don't do any surveys when it comes to deciding about our branding, our design, or our formulas, because we're bringing a 300-year-old ritual back to life. And so for me, it's about honoring something that's very authentic and pure and just making it accessible and relevant for men and women today. So that color scheme, for example, comes straight from Kyoto and the geisha I've studied with, and the artistry that was so wonderful that surrounds them.
That's awesome. So it is a part of the story.
Yeah, everything should be.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when we kicked off the call today, it was really my intention was to go from that idea to a product, and then a product to a brand. And you've really successfully been able to do that. And if you could sum up what that process looks like, or how you've been able to do that as we come into the final stretch here, I think that'd be really important, because I think the vast majority of entrepreneurs, especially if they're just starting out, don't really understand the difference between a product or a product offer and a brand. And if you have any insights or wisdom that you could share around that, that'd be super valuable.
To me, I think a brand is a promise. It is when somebody sees your name and your logo, they know what to expect, and they've come to expect a certain experience and quality. And so in terms of how do you make a brand come to life and then make it successful as a business, my truest litmus test for me is just, are we delivering on our promise? So for example, for us, I think having a robust customer loyalty, we don't call them customer care or customer management. They're customer love, because their only job is to love our customers. We have a team of 5 people strong, and they don't have any sales incentives. Nobody tells them when to get off the phone or what they can and cannot reimburse or do to make somebody happy. Their only job is to make our clients happy all the time, 24/7, because that's all that actually matters to us. And then R&D, having our own, we actually have something called Tatcha Institute. Our scientists not only develop all of our own formulas, but they spend about 30% of their time teaching, because, on one hand, other brands are competitors. On the other hand, it would be great if everybody could start making formulas that are cleaner and more effective and more elegant for women out there, because there might be implications to the next generation. And knowing where we want to invest our money, and then being choiceful about where we won't invest our money. We're in Silicon Valley, where lots of people spend things on fancy furniture, the perks that you would expect from a
slide,
Facebook or Google type company.
Slide from story 2 to story 1. Right.
Exactly. We don't spend our money in ways that is not of benefit to our clients. And a lot of that too has been making sure that you're raising money from people who respect that you want to build a brand to be around for 100 years, that you will be values driven, that you will give away all your profits, frankly, in the early years to a nonprofit, because it's the right thing to do. And then hiring a team that is as values driven as the organization for cultural fit. These are all one of the 10,000 things that I think that we have to do every day to make sure that our promise comes true.
That's awesome. That's super, super powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been extremely educational, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today. And how can everybody go check out Tatcha and connect with you and just get involved in your story and in your brand, and take advantage of that experience?
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you so much. We have a website, tatcha.com, tatcha.com. Put our customer love team to the test. They will impress you. And then I'm on Snapchat, which is just Tatcha Beauty, and I manage it myself. You asked before about customer surveys, consumer surveys. Part of the reason that we don't do testing up front is because we just make sure that we're available to connect with our clients 24/7. So I manage that myself. I take all the questions there myself. So anybody who needs anything, we're here.
Awesome. And so it's interesting, we've got a fairly large portion of this audience who are obviously men, and some amazing women as well. But if the guys were going to go to Tatcha and pick up a gift for their significant other, what would you recommend that they get?
Ooh, that's such a great question. I always recommend that people start off with our discovery set, which is a ritual of everything you need from cleansing through moisturizing in mini size, so you can make sure it's right for you. And 8 out of 10 people are going to have normal skin. And so the ritual discovery kit for normal skin is a wonderful way to start. And it's packaged beautifully, so it makes a great gift as well.
Perfect. And if you're a guy, which product would you recommend?
For men, I love exfoliants. The core of our ritual is a rice-based exfoliant, and it comes in 4 different strengths for your skin type. If you're not sure, just use a classic, which is white for normal skin, because for men, their skin is a little bit thicker. And then with the shaving, you can get the ingrown hairs. And so if you exfoliate as often, as twice a day, this is so gentle that it's meant to be used twice a day, not once a week. It'll just really help with keeping your skin smooth, the pores small, breakouts at bay. And then everybody should be moisturizing and using SPF.
Perfect. Oh, and y'all do have a daily sunscreen?
Oh, yes. And it's made out of silk proteins, so it's not heavy or weird or white on the face. And we don't use any nanotechnology. So it's a lovely, lovely, lovely formula. And it has a pore tightener in there.
Very cool. Well, lots of goodies for everybody. So guys, go check out Tatcha.com. Victoria, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It's, it becomes an increasingly small world. The more of these interviews with entrepreneurs like yourself that I get to meet and our mutual friends and I think mutual philosophy and value set when it comes to building businesses these days. So thank you so much for what you're doing and for taking the time to share your words of wisdom with our audience today.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. When I first started out, 8 years ago now, I didn't have very many entrepreneur friends. I wish I could have found your podcast so I would have had other people to learn from. I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, and I'm honored to share our story. Oh,
well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Ladies as well, go check out Tatcha.com, connect with Victoria, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.